Okay, everybody. Good evening. I think we're going to begin, and I hope everybody is doing well. Thank you for tuning in. We're going to talk about a very fascinating and controversial topic, and that is about the original sin city, none other than Sodom. I did a little bit of a search on contemporary sin cities. Well, of course, Las Vegas and all the various different sites I looked at. Las Vegas always takes first place as Sin City, but there's a lot of competition, including in America. Interestingly enough, most of these sites had Houston, at least in America, Sin City. Others, New Orleans. Now, I don't know if you've been to New Orleans, but yeah, there's a lot of very, let us say, unusual far out in New Orleans or New Orleans, as it's called. And then there are a lot of other, Hollywood is in there too, as well, as being a city with quite a bit into Ibiza, but never been to Rio. Amsterdam is on the list as well. Of course, we all know about the red light district in Amsterdam, so it's definitely got its place on the Sin City list. And I hate to say it, but Tel Aviv is on a number of lists also. We'll talk about that when we talk about one of the primary sins of Sodom. So we're familiar with somewhat with the story of Sodom and Amorah. Let me say, first of all, that the Amorah is mentioned in a number of different places, but of course, it is Sodom that gets almost all the notoriety. And I think the reason for that is these were actually five cities together in one area, essentially the area of the Dead Sea. We're not sure exactly where Sodom was, even though in Israel today we have some of the hotels in Sodom. But I think the idea was that Sodom was the worst of the worst. And Amorah is mentioned because it was the next biggest of the cities. And as we say, Ayla Rasha, Ayla Shcheno. It's misfortune of the wicked and anyone who lives near any neighbor. They're going to be painted with a wide brush. So Amorah, maybe they deserved it, maybe they didn't. Clearly, Sodom is the one that everybody talks about. And we're going to go over the story of Sodom and then talk about what is it that made it so universally known as the Sin City. Okay, I see it. I hope it's not hard for you to hear me because this is the only place really I have to do it. So let's take a look at what happens in this week's Parsha of Vayera. Now, initially, remember it is Abraham who argues that when he finds out that Sodom is going to be destroyed, and Hashem says, Zakat Sodom Ba'amoraki Rabbah, I have heard the screaming, and we'll talk about that later, who was screaming and why, coming out of Sodom, Kirabah Vachatatem. It is it and their sin, Ki Kavda Ma'od, is very heavy, is very serious, and therefore he's going to destroy Sodom. So we know the famous story that Abraham argues with him, indicating, as we know, that everything in life is, he negotiates about how many tzaddikim are necessary in order to save the city. When he gets down to the number, and again, in searching or in, it's not clear exactly how he knows, but ultimately, when he gets down all the way to 10, they do not find even 10 tzaddikim worthy to spare the city, and it goes on the hit list. This is not, by the way, where we learn out the concept of 10 being a minion. Some people get this wrong, but no, we learned that out from another set of evil people, and that's from the Meraglim. The 10 Meraglim, they are referred to in the Torah as an Edah, as a congregation. And we learned from there that you need at least 10 to make a minion. So neither one positive, favorable source. In any case, after Abraham has argued unsuccessfully to save Sodom, we get an idea of why they deserve to be destroyed. And we'll just quickly go over the story. So we have the angels who have come, three angels have come to see Abraham. Two of them come to Sodom, one to destroy Sodom, the other one to save Lot. And Lot Yoshev Bashar Sodom, he is sitting there at the gates of Sodom. And Vayar Lot Vayakam Likratam, he sees them, he gets up, Vayishtachu Apayim Arza, he bows before them. And then he says, Hinena Adonai Suruna El Beit Avdechem. Perhaps he recognizes that these are holy angels, not clear. He says, I would like you to turn aside and come to my house, your servant's house, my house, rest and wash your feet. This is what Abraham did as well, Lot's uncle, so he sees that's what I need to do as well. And wake up early and go on your way. Vayomru lo, and they say no, ki barachov nalin. We will spend the night in the square, rachov, the rachava. But Lot doesn't accept this. He happens to have a train of hospitality like his uncle. Vayifsar b'ma'od v'yasuru elav v'yavo el beito. He finally convinces them that they need to come to his house. He makes them a meal, a fairly comprehensive meal, and he bakes matzah. He is the first person, by the way, in history recorded to bake matzah. A lot of people say it's Sarah, but it's not. It is Lot. He makes them matzah vayochelu, and they ate. Now, maybe they did this just so he wouldn't, some want to say, even though they were angels, angels don't need to eat, but they did it so he wouldn't feel bad. You know, if Bubby makes a special dish, you have to eat it, even if you don't want to eat. In any case, then what happened when to lay down? The house is surrounded by the townspeople of Sodom, young and old, and they demand from Lot, where are those people that came? We know they're in there. Bring them out that we may know them. Yeah, it's a very kind of strange expression, but the word v'neidah otam, that we should know them, clearly can have sexual overtones. That indeed, this is, as we'll see, one of the primary sins of Sodom. Well, Vayetze Aleim Lot Apevcha, Lot comes to the door and he closes to the entrance, closes the door behind them and says, Al nachai tareu, please, my brothers, don't act so wickedly. If you're really interested in having a sexual encounter, I have two virgin daughters. I'll take them out. I'll give them to you, which also isn't a very good reflection on Lot, who can take it both ways. He wants to be a good host, but at the same time, he's doing something that's, in any case, he says, just leave the people alone. Lanashim ha'el al tasu davar. To these people, ha'el can also mean godly. Ki al kain bo b'tzel korati. They come under my shadow, under my threshold, harm them. And of course, they do not take well to this, the townspeople of Sodom. They try to find the door to enter the house, but they are stricken with blindness. Vayikshu l'shbor hadelet, and they can't. They come near to the door, but hiku b'sanverim, they're struck with this blindness. Vayil'u limtzoa patach, they can't find the door, and this obviously is an indication of the evil, and ultimately, of course, they're going to be destroyed. Lot and his family essentially will be saved. His wife is another story. So there's a great deal of discussion about what was so terrible about Sodom that the city city had to be destroyed. Abraham is destined, and everyone in it destroyed with fire and brimstone. And this is of when you have a complete and burning everything. Now, I should mention, oh, okay, I see that we have some problems. I'm gonna move to a different place for a minute, see if I can get a better connection. Hang on. Let's try that in a different room. I hope this is better. So, Susan, I have to turn yours off. Okay, good. We're good to go. Thank you. So, what is it that's so bad about Stone that it has to be completely and totally decimated? Well, as we saw before, one of the commentaries based upon this word v'nei da'ah, we shall know them. It's a sexual term, and so an opinion that definitely exists in Jewish sources, but was certainly more accentuated in Christian sources, is that we're talking about homosexuality, therefore giving rise to this term sodomy based upon Sodom. They're even in England, in the UK, calling somebody a sod, obviously not a very complimentary term. The idea of, and then there's a dispute over what that means. Does it mean anal sex? Does it mean bestiality, sex with an animal? The Gemara discusses all this, and okay, that's the real R-rated part, and that's certainly one of the opinions, and it's of course accentuated here about this. The townspeople don't want the daughters; they want the men, and according to the Gemara, that's certainly one of the reasons why Sodom was destroyed. But I'd say the more prevalent reason that's given is not so much about sexuality, but it's about the moral level of the town, that they are not willing in any way, shape, or form to accept or help strangers. They don't want strangers in their town. They want a self-enclosed community where, and by the way, Sodom in its time, according to the Gemara, was a very fertile, rich place. And the people, as we'll see, I'll read in a few moments from Yechezkel, his description of Sodom, and he describes it as being a kind of luxurious place with privileged people living there. And they didn't want any strangers, especially the poor, they felt that nobody needs to come here. We live in our own gated community. Stay out. And if you come here, you come at your own risk. And so the Gemara gives a number of different stories as to what happened to people who entered Sodom, accentuating how evil they were. One story, for example, is about two girls. One is wealthy, one is poor. The wealthy one tries to help the poor girl by giving her water. She kind of sneaks in her water bottle or whatever she's using for the water, flour or other items, and they somehow find out that she is sharing with this other girl, and she and the girl are both burned at the stake. There's another story in the Gemara about a woman, and this is a more famous one, I think. She's traveling through the town. She doesn't even intend to stay there. She asks for water, and someone gives her water. By one tradition, it is actually Lot's daughter who helps her. And Lot he has his issues, but he's from Zerah Abraham. He's descended from Abraham, who was a person of great chesed. So it passes through the generations. His daughter tries to help. She is found out that she's helping this woman, and she is covered from head to toe with honey, tied to a tree, and the bees sting her to death. And according to the Gemara, she cries out to Hashem and says, God, you have to do justice. You have to administer justice to these people who are killing me. She isn't saved, but this is where it's a dispute whether she was saved or not. But this is one reason why the pasuk says that in response to these cries, Zakat Sodom v'Amorah, that it says, Erdana ve'ereh. Hashem says, I will go down and see where this cry is coming from. Hakatsa ba'alai. And you see it in feminine terms. So we see that it's a woman. And Hashem is coming down, as it were, in a kind of sense of doing justice and trying to see if this is really true and could be true, that somebody could be that evil. Another story talks about the fact that to get to Sodom you had to cross a bridge, and there were some people that did come through for one reason or another, maybe for economic reasons, not to stay but to pass through, and you had to pay 4 zuzim to get onto the bridge. And some people said, well, I won't take the bridge, I'll swim. But they came to the other side. They said, that'll be 8 zuzim, double what it would cost you to take the bridge. And they were told them you had to pay, and they didn't pay. They were beaten very seriously. And then after they were beaten, says the Gemara in Sanhedrin, they charged these people even more, saying, we did you a favor because we caused bloodletting, which, in ancient times was a form of healing, is bleeding a person. So they beat them bloody, and then they wanted to charge them for that as well. We also probably are familiar with the story of those who came to spend the night in Stone. Not a wise choice. Stone basically puts the Bates Hotel in the movie Psycho to shame. I'm not telling you to watch that movie, once known as one of the scariest movies ever made. And well, they've got nothing on Sodom, because these people came in and they said, oh, you need a bed for the night? Fine, we'll take care of you. They laid them down in what's called a Sodom bed. If they were too short and they didn't occupy the entire bed, they did what later would be known as the rack. They stretched their bodies, breaking bones to get them to fit. And if they were too big for the bed, which was a standard Sodom bed, then they cut off their feet to make them shorter. So not the kind of place. It's quite a jump from the Grand Kempinski, not to be recommended, but it's an indication of the evil way that they treated anybody else. They would give them, the poor would come, and the inhabitants of Stone would give them a coin. Now, this was a special coin. It was a coin that could not be cashed anywhere. So not only did they have no food, but it was very frustrating to them that they had a coin and everybody said, sorry, we can't accept, that's not currency that we accept here. And ultimately, they would starve to death. The Gemara, the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avot, talking about the different qualities of people, that one who says shali shali v'shelcha shelcha, what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours. Some say it's a mita benonit, that could be a good thing in the sense that somebody is saying, I'm satisfied with what I have, you should be satisfied with what you have. But nevertheless, others say it's midat Sodom. It is a Sodom-like quality, which we call zenene v'zelo chaser, that even something which doesn't in any way harm you or incur any expense on your part, nevertheless, you deny it to somebody else because they will prosper by it. So there are many examples of that. If somebody you need to on an emergency cut through somebody's property and it doesn't really harm them, but it helps you. Nevertheless, in Sodom, they would say, no, we won't do it. We're not willing to do anything to help you. And this is what we call the midat Sodom. Even to this day, somebody begrudges a favor to someone, even though it doesn't put them out at all. And in a sense, what's going on here, these are people who are exhibiting the exact opposite of the trait of Abraham. That's why he's involved in this story with his nephew, indicating that this is a primary, remember, people are not keeping mitzvot, but this is a primary moral imperative that people need to be people of chesed, baalei chesed, especially when it doesn't in any way hurt them or cost them. And therefore, they're the epitome, the people of Sodom, of those who really have no moral sense whatsoever. We've seen this story before a little bit because we saw in the story of the Tower of Babel, Migdal Bavel, that they also felt we don't want anybody else in our town, in our area. The tower, according to some, was built so that you could only live in a distance from where you could see the tower. They didn't want people to spread out. They wanted people to stay local. If you could see the tower, fine. If you moved further than that, no, you weren't allowed. You would be punished. And so Hashem's desire was that people should spread out, that the world should be populated, that don't be selfish. And this is now accentuated and amplified by the story of Sodom, that they're trying to create a isolated society that will do anything and everything to prevent other people from coming into their midst and infringing on their property. Let me read what Yechezkel has to say about them. Now, Yechezkel, he's pretty severe about the Jewish people as well, but this is in the 16th chapter of Yechezkel, and he says, Hinei zeh haya avon Sodom achotech. He calls Sodom our sister because if we're not acting correctly, this was their sin. Gaon, sivat lechem v'shalva, hashket, hayula, belivnoteha. They had serenity. They had plenty to eat. They were a kind of, in their sense, a model society. The Yad Ani Ve'Avion Lo Hechazika, but they would do nothing to help the poor, the disenfranchised. Batig Behena V'Tasena Toiva Lefanai, and they committed abomination before me. Here again, a word with sexual overtones, to'eva, vasiraten kasher iti, and therefore I had to remove them when I saw what they were doing. So this very extreme act of destroying and decimating so that the entire city is just reduced to, as we said, fire and brimstone. We know that area is desolate, and Lot's wife turns into a pillar of salt. Uh, there are different reasons for that. One explanation that you wouldn't even give somebody as much as a pinch of salt to help with their food, and she's an example of what that town was like. We would call it like another movie of the past, a town without pity, and that's exactly what they were. And at the end of the day, Hashem is making an example, and he's trying to teach us something that I think is quite important, to say that we have a right to work and amass property and uh, all kinds of things to surround us with things we like. But we also have to remember that everything comes from Hashem, that we don't, in effect, really own anything at all. Even our bodies are only loaned to us. They're not ours to do whatever we want with. And that's certainly true of our property as well. And there has to be a sense of camaraderie and sharing with the world at large, within limits, of course. And uh, in order to impress upon all future generations, Sodom was made as an example of what can happen when you go the opposite way. Not only do you not give to others, but you punish them for even being in your midst, for even daring to ask for something. I would say, and one of the lessons in trying to understand what this is trying to teach us is telling us that, first of all, uh, we need to build societies that express godly traits and midot. L'taken olam b'malchut Shaddai, to fix the world and to make it a better world. And that part of that is sharing with others. At the same time, the story of Sodom is telling us that you can, as much as we are told to love others, and this is Hashem was impressing upon Abraham, that he's saying, I know you love everybody, you want there to be a worldwide community, but understand that there are some people, some entities that go too far. And if they are so thoroughly evil, then Hashem says, then they're beyond any kind of redemption, and they have to be destroyed. And I think all of us, we don't have to be uh, geniuses to understand what's going on right in our midst. We see a society bordering Israel that really is a Sodom-like entity that is terrible to its own citizens, that are willing to see everything destroyed in order for them to harm other people. And individuals like that, says Hashem, there may very well be no redemption. They have to be expunged. And that will serve as a lesson to everyone that if you've gone too far and your evil ways have shocked the world and you've done things that are beyond any level of immorality and indecency, then truly you don't have any right to come to God and ask to be spared. And so even though we don't have exactly a modern day Sodom today, and I will say that we have a lot of sharing among all different peoples throughout the world. When you have a society that has these kinds of midot stone, then nobody should feel bad when they are erased from the earth, as an example that this is an ungodly, terribly ungodly way to act. Hopefully, we as the Jewish people, we have always demonstrated one of our great traits is chesed, and is the ability to be dan lekaf zchut and to try to find the good in people, just as Abraham did. Unfortunately, he failed, but one has to make the effort, and hopefully we'll succeed, and the world will be a better world. So thank you to everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next week, same time, same place, and wishing everybody only besorot tovot and Shabbat Shalom.